Hi, good afternoon or good morning. May peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany coming through live in effect. And today we're gonna do a daily Black history. All right, so if you are on YouTube, make sure you hit and subscribe to the channel. Share the notification bell if you like this channel. If you are on Facebook, if you like what you're watching and you like the content, make sure you share the video. All right, so we're gonna pay a special tribute to someone that was a very prominent figure in the African American community, right? And he played his major role in the civil rights movement, especially when it came down to Bloody Sunday, the March on Selma. He just recently passed away on July the 17th of 2020. And the person I'm talking about is John Lewis. Um, if you guys don't know who he is, this is what he looked like. That's John Lewis. And he just recently returned to the essence of the ancestor. Yeah, he just returned to the essence. So what I want to do is I want to go into the history of how John Lewis got from where he was to where he's at, from his life all the way up to his death. So that's how we're going to do it. So no matter how many people feel a certain way or how people might not like his politics or anything like that, but we want to take the time out to actually pay respect to this man and, look at his work and look at all the things that he has contributed. So let's go ahead and let's look at his biography. All right. This is John Lewis right here. So who was John Lewis? Let's talk about his early life. So John Lewis was born on February 21st, 1940 in Troy, Alabama, the third of 10 children of Willie Mae and Eddie Lewis. His parents were sharecroppers in rural Pike County, Alabama. So he grew up with parents who were sharecroppers. See, a lot of our ancestors did a lot of sharecropping in the South. So in places like Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia. All right, and then it says, as a young child, Lewis had little interaction with white people. By time he was 6, Lewis had seen. By the time he was 6, Lewis had seen only 2 white people in his life. As he grew older, though, he began taking trips into town with his family, where he experienced racism and segregation. Such as the public library All right, sorry about that, you guys. All right, so as every average young person growing up in the South, many didn't get the opportunity to get around other children or being able to be in a multicultural environment because they were taught to be segregated from others. So they were always in an isolated community or, amongst their own kind. And many don't get a chance to see what it's like to actually live in an integrated society during that time period, the time where Joe Louis grew up, until they was able to move up north. And so you have to know that a lot of people from the South migrated to the North because they sought the opportunity of being able to find better jobs, being able to interact with other ethnic groups, and being able to make decent income and have a decent living. And so that's what it was for Joe Louis. You know, somebody who come from a very segregated community to being in an integrated society and looking forward to having the best things in life. Let's go ahead. In 1955, Lewis first heard Martin Luther King Jr. on the radio, and when the Montgomery bus boycott led by King began later that year, Lewis closely followed the news about it. Lewis would later meet Rosa Parks when he was 17 and met King for the first time when he was 18. So he met Dr. King, and let me show you a picture of him and Dr. King. All right, that's Joe Louis. That's Dr. King, and I think that's Roy Ennis. Yeah, I think that's Roy Ennis. All right. So let's continue on. All right, so student activism and the SNCC, Nashville Student Movement. He was also a part of this. There he go, right there, right next to Dr. King. And that's when they met with John F. Kennedy in the Oval Office. All right, it says Lewis graduated from American Baptist Theological Seminary in Nashville and then received a bachelor's degree in religion and philosophy from Fisk University. As a student, he was very dedicated to civil rights movement. He organized sit-ins at segregated lunch counters in Nashville and took part in many other civil rights activities as part of the Nashville student movement. The Nashville sit-in movement was responsible for the desegregation of lunch counters in downtown Nashville. Lewis was arrested and jailed many times in the nonviolent movement to desegregate the downtown area of the city. All right, hold on. And he was also instrumental in organizing the bus boycotts and other nonviolent protests in the fight for voter and racial equality. While a student, he was invited to attend nonviolence workshop held in basement of Clark Memorial United Methodist Church by Reverend James Lawson and Reverend Kelly Miller Smith. There, Lewis and many of his fellow students became dedicated adherents to the discipline and philosophy of nonviolence, which he practiced for the rest of his life. So, my camera went out. But anyways, John Lewis. Now, before I get to that, many people believe that nonviolence didn't really work for our people or our community and whatnot. And you have a right to that. And you know what? In some cases, I agree. But many people believe that nonviolence was a way because it was to show that they weren't trying to retaliate or trying to fight back with the law enforcement, but they just wanted equal opportunity and rights. So it was their way of saying we're not trying to be combative. We're trying to give a symbolism, a sign to let you guys know we want to be a part of this society. We have worked just as hard as everybody else, and we should earn the same rights and same opportunity as others. And so that's what the whole concept of no violence was supposed to represent. It was supposed to represent some form of consolidation and some form of unity. That's all. But you know, as you can see, John Lewis have played his role in Nashville in the sit-in movement, in the bus boycotts, and all other movements. So this man have really been through that trial. He has been through the troubles. He has seen what took place. Let's look at down here where it says Freedom Rides. In 1961, Lewis became one of the 13 original Freedom Riders. All right. And what was the Freedom Riders? Let's look at that. Let's look that up real quick. Okay. So this Freedom Riders movement took place in Jackson, Mississippi. All right. So let's look at. Let's just take a look at this first paragraph right here. All right. So Freedom Riders were civil rights activists who rode interstate buses into the segregated southern United States in 1961 and subsequent years to challenge the non-enforcement of the United States Supreme Court decision Morgan versus Virginia and Bolton versus Virginia, which ruled that segregated public buses were unconstitutional. The southern states had ignored the rulings and the federal government did nothing to enforce them. The first Freedom Ride left Washington, D.C. on May 4th, 1961 and was scheduled to arrive in New Orleans on May 17th. On May 17th. So it was to basically say, okay, the whole thing was about protesting against the segregation that was taking place on the bus. Now, if you guys didn't know about that, black people had to sit on the back of the bus and the whites got to sit on the front of the bus. And so that was their way of saying, look, if that's how it's going to be, then we might as well not get on the public transportation buses. If we got to constantly sit to the back and we can't sit in the front, then we're just going to go ahead and find our way to get to work or to get to where we need to go. Okay. So, and it also said there were 7 whites and 6 blacks who were determined to ride from Washington, D.C. to New Orleans in an integrated fashion. At that time, several states of old Confederacy still enforced laws prohibiting blacks and whites riders from sitting next to each other on public transportation. The Freedom Ride originated by the Fellowship of Reconciliation and revived by James Farmer and Congress of Racial Equality Corps, was initiated to pressure the federal government to enforce the Supreme Court decision in Bolton versus Virginia, 1960, that declared segregated interstate bus travel to be unconstitutional. The Freedom Rides also exposed the passivity of the government regarding violence against citizens of the country who were simply acting in accordance with the law. The federal government had trusted the notoriously racist Alabama police to protect riders, but did not except to have agents take notes. The Kennedy administration then called for a cooling off period, a moratorium on Freedom Rides. So, of course, the racist Alabama police weren't going to protect anyone. For anything, they was going to stick the dog on the people. That's just what they did. So, which resulted into people losing their lives, people being injured. Now, we have not been that far removed from the racial society. We have not been that far removed from Jim Crow. Jim Crow ended what, about 56 years ago. Jim Crow ended about 56 years ago. That has not been that long. That has not been that long. All right, so, and let's look up right here what it says in the South. In the South, Lewis and other nonviolent freedom riders were beaten by angry mobs, arrested at times, and taken to jail. At 21 years old, Lewis was the first of the freedom riders to be assaulted while in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He tried to enter a white-only waiting room, and two white men attacked him, injuring his face and kicking him in the ribs. Nevertheless, only 2 weeks later, Lewis joined a freedom ride that was bound for Jackson. We were determined not to let any act of violence keep us from our goal. We knew our lives could be threatened, but we had made up our minds to not to turn back, Lewis said. Recently, in regard to his perseverance following the act of violence, Lewis was also in prison for 40 days in the Mississippi State Penitentiary in Sunflower County, Mississippi, after participating in a Freedom Riders activity in that state. Now, going through all of this, imagine being incarcerated for 40 days because you were protesting. Imagine being incarcerated for 3 months because you were protesting. Imagine being beat down and have to suffer bruises and permanent damage because you're fighting just to be a human being in your own society. All right, so let's read right here what he had an interview with CNN. Okay, in the interview with CNN during the 40th anniversary of the Freedom Rides, Lewis recounted the sheer amount of violence he and 12 other original Freedom Riders endured. In Birmingham, the riders were beaten with baseball bats, chains, lead pipes, and stones. They were arrested by police who led them across the border into Tennessee and let them go. They reorganized and rode to Montgomery, where they were met with more violence. And Lewis was hit in the head with a wooden crate. It was very violent. I thought I was going to die. I left lying at the Greyhound bus station in Montgomery unconscious, said Lewis, remembering the incident when Core gave up on the Freedom Ride because of the violence. Lewis and fellow activist Diane Nash arranged for the Nashville students to take it over and bring it to a successful conclusion. So it got so bad that Core gave up because they don't want to continue to endure the violence. And they didn't want to continue to end up losing people in that organization. So they said, you know what, let's put an end to this. And Lewis said no. Lewis and another activist came together and decided that they were going to continue on with the Freedom Rides. Let's continue on. All right then. Okay, on February 2009, 48 years after he had been blooded in a Greyhound station during a Freedom Ride, Lewis received an apology on national television from a white Southerner, former Klansman, Elwyn Wilson. You know what? In my opinion, these apologies that these white folks giving all of a sudden, it's like it's a little too late for us to really accept those apologies, because we have endured so much brutality all these years, and it has taken a toll over our people. So now all of a sudden you come back and apologize and expect for us to really forgive. Now, Lewis was able to forgive this man, But any other average black person who kept enduring racism and violence because of racism, they're not going to easily forgive a person who has done it to them. It's just not going to happen. Okay, so, and we're going to look at where it says the SNCC chairman. That's a SNCC program. So it says in 1963, when Charles Madrew stepped down as chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Lewis was one of the founding members of SNCC, was elected to take over. He held the post chairman until 1966. During his tenure, SNCC opened the Freedom Schools, launched the Mississippi Freedom Summer, and organized some of the voter registration efforts during the 1965 Selma Voting Rights Campaign. As the chairman of SNCC, Lewis had written a speech in reaction to the Civil Rights Bill of 1963. The planned speech denounced the bill because it did not protect African Americans against police brutality or provide African Americans with the right to vote, describing it as too little and too late. But when copies of the speech were distributed on August 27, other chairs of the march insist that it be revised. James Foreman rewrote Lewis' speech on a portable typewriter in a small anteroom behind Lincoln's statue during the program. SNCC's initial assertion, "We cannot support wholeheartedly the Kennedy Civil Rights Bill," was replaced with, "We support it with great reservation." So in the beginning, they didn't really support John F. Kennedy's Civil Rights Bill, right? But somebody else, go by the name James Foreman, he retyped the speech that Lewis has originally given and replaced it with, "We support it with great reservation." So in order just so that way the Civil Rights Bill can remain in place, and that way that African Americans receive the opportunity to vote and receive the proper protection against police brutality. So what you see in this case, they had to play along with the politics. So even though John Lewis didn't like the Civil Rights Bill, someone else had to come along and rewrite his speech in order for this bill to pass. All right, so again, that's John Lewis. Okay. All right, so let's go down here where it talks about the Bloody Sunday, and I'm gonna show a little video clip. In 1964, Lewis coordinated SNCC's effort for Mississippi Freedom Summer, a campaign to register Black voters across the South and expose college students from around the country to the perils of African American life in the South. Lewis traveled the country encouraging students to spend their summer break trying to help people in Mississippi, the most recalcitrant state in the Union, to register and vote. Lewis became nationally known during his prominent role in some marches when on March 7, 1965, a day that would become known as Bloody Sunday, Lewis and fellow activist Hosea Williams led over 600 marchers across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. At the end of the bridge, they were met by Alabama state troopers who ordered them to disperse. When the march When the marchers stopped to pray, the police discharged tear gas and mounted troopers charged the demonstrators, beating them with nightsticks. Lewis' skull was fractured, but he escaped across the bridge to Brown Chapel, the movement headquarters church in Selma. Lewis bore scars on his head from the incident for the rest of his life. Again, this man has taken many beatdowns by the police. All right, so let's look at his works in the government. All right, so early work in government. In January of 1977, incumbent Democratic U.S. Congressman Andrew Young of Georgia's 5th Congressional District resigned in order to become the U.S. ambassador to the UN under President Jimmy Carter. In the March 1977 open primary, Atlanta City Councilman Winch Fowler Jr. ranked first with 40% of the vote. Failing to reach the 50% threshold to win outright, Lewis ranked second with 29% of the vote in the April election. Fowler defeated Lewis 62% to 38% after his unsuccessful bid for Congress in 1977. He accepted a position with the Carter administration as Associate Director of Action, responsible for running the VISTA program, the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, and the Foster Grandparent Program. He held that job for 2.5 years and resigned as the 1980 election approached. All right, so in 1981, Lewis ran for an at-large seat on the Atlanta City Council. He won with 69% of the vote and served on the council until 1986. And that's him right there, John Lewis, with Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. These two crooks right here. Yeah, they were some crooks. The trap queen. All right, so after 9 years as a member of U.S. House of Representatives, Fowler gave up the seat to make a successful run for the U.S. Senate. Lewis decided to run for the 5th district again in the August Democratic primary, where a victory was considered tantamount to election. State Representative Julian Bond ranked first with 47%, just 3 points shy of winning outright. Lewis earned 35% in second place. In the runoff, Lewis pulled up an upset against Bond, defeating him 52% to 48%. The race was said to have badly strained relation in Atlanta's black community, as many black leaders had supported Bond over Lewis. Lewis was endorsed by the Atlanta newspaper and a favor of the white liberals establishment, with his victory coming from his strong polling among white voters, a minority in the district. During the campaign, he ran advertisement accusing Bond of corruption, implying that Bond used cocaine, and suggests that Bond had lied about his civil rights activism. Oh. During the campaign, he ran advertisements accusing Bond of corruption, implying that Bond used cocaine, and suggests that Bond had lied about his civil rights activism. Oh, all right. And it says, In the November general election, Lewis defeated Republican Portia Scott 75% to 25%. All right. And so let's skip all the way on down to here. It says that he was challenged in the Democratic primary just twice in 1992 and 2008. In 1992, he defeated State Representative Mabel Thomas 76% to 24%. In 2008, Thomas decided to challenge Lewis again, as well as Marco Hushin. Lewis defeated Hushin and Thomas 69% to 16% to 15%. All right. Okay, so let's read what it says. Lewis was one of the most liberal members of the House and one of the most liberal congressmen to have represented a district in the Deep South. He had been characterized as hardcore liberal on the issues. The Washington Post described Lewis in 1998 as fiercely partisan Democratic, but also fiercely independent. Lewis characterized himself as strong and adamant liberal. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution said Lewis was the only former major civil rights leader who extended his fight for human rights and racial reconciliation to halls of Congress. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution also said that to those who know him, from U.S. senators to 20-something congressional aides, he is calling the conscience of Congress. Lewis had cited former Florida Senator and Congressman Claude Pepper, a staunch liberal, as being the colleague that he has most admired. Lewis also spoke out in support of gay rights and national health insurance. Okay. So that's him and Hillary Clinton in 2005. Okay, and it says in January of 2001, Lewis boycotted the inauguration of George W. Bush by staying in Atlanta district. He did not attend to the swearing in because he didn't believe Bush was the true elected president. In March of 2003, Lewis spoke to a crowd of 30,000 in Oregon during an anti-war protest before the start of the Iraq War. He was arrested in 2006 and 2009 and outside the Sudan embassy in protest against the genocide in Darfur. He was one of 8 U.S. representatives from 6 states arrested while holding a sit-in near the west side of U.S. Capitol building to advocate for immigration reform. Lewis also led the 2016 House Democratic sit-in, demanding that the House take action on gun control in the wake of the Orlando nightclub shooting and the failure of the United States Senate to act. Okay. And then it says on February 2008, Lewis formally changed his support and endorsed Obama. After Obama clinched the Democratic nomination for president, Lewis said, if someone had told me this would be happening now, I would have told them they were crazy out their minds. They didn't know what they were talking about. I just wish the others were around to see this day. To the people who were beating, put in jail, were asked questions they could never answer to register to vote. It's amazing. Despite switching his support to Obama, Lewis' support of Clinton for several months led to criticism from his constituents. One of his challengers in the House primary election set up campaign headquarters inside the building that served as Obama's Georgia office. Okay. Yeah, that's him at the Women's March downtown in Atlanta. Okay, so let's go into his personal life. Um, Lewis met Lillian Miles at a New Year's Eve party hosted by Zenora Clayton. They married in 1968. Together, they had one son named John Miles. Lillian died on December 31st of 2012. Lewis was a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity. On December 29, 2019, Lewis announced that he had been diagnosed with stage 4 of pancreatic cancer. He remained in the Washington, D.C. area for his treatment. Lewis stated, I have been in some kind of fight for freedom, equality, basic human rights for nearly my entire life. I have never faced a fight quite like the one I have now. And sadly, on July 17, 2020, Lewis died at the age of 80. So that's his biography. That's his life. And we're gonna play a little clip that he did with Oprah. All right. So uh this is coming from Oprah's website, Oprah.com. Here it is.
Line up in twos. Walk from Selma to Montgomery.
We're marching today to dramatize to the nation, dramatize to the world, that hundreds and thousands of Negro citizens of Alabama, but particularly here in the Pikeville area, denied the right to vote.
I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. I thought I was going to get arrested and go to jail, so in this backpack, I wanted to have something to eat. I had one apple and one orange. I had 2 books. I had toothpaste and a toothbrush. But we understood while we were walking through the streets of Selma that the sheriff of Selma and Dallas County had requested that all white men over the age of 21 to come down to the courthouse that Saturday night to be deputized, to become part of his posse. We just kept walking. We come to the highest point on the Evan Pettus Bridge. Down below, we see a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. We saw all of this water down below in the Alabama River. Jose Williams said to me, John, can you swim? I said, no. Jose, what about you? He said, a little. I said, well, there's too much water in this river for us to jump. We must go straight ahead. A man by the name of John Cloud identified himself and said, I'm Major John Cloud.
Oops. Hold on. Oops. Sorry about that. Hold on, you guys. Let me go back and play the video. It's on the advertisement. I'm going to play the video again.
up in twos to walk from Selma to Montgomery.
We're marching today to dramatize to the nation, dramatize to the world, that hundreds and thousands of Negro citizens of Alabama, but particularly here in the Black Belt area, denied the right to vote.
I was wearing a backpack before it became fashionable to wear backpacks. I thought I was going to get arrested and go to jail, so in this backpack, I wanted to have something to eat. I had one apple and one orange. I had 2 books. I had toothpaste and a toothbrush. But we understood while we were walking through the streets of Selma that the sheriff of Selma and Dallas County had requested that all white men over the age of 21 to come down to the courthouse that Saturday night to be deputized to become part of his posse. We just kept walking. We come to the highest point on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Down below, we see a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. We saw all of this water down below in the Alabama River. Jose Williams said to me, "John, can you swim?" I said, "No." Jose, "What about you?" He said, "A little." I said, "Well, there's too much water in this river for us to jump. We must go straight ahead." A man by the name of John Cloud identified himself and said, "I am Major John Cloud of the Alabama State Troopers."
He's detrimental to your safety. Continue this march and I'm paying attention.
This is an unlawful march. Will not be allowed to continue.
You are ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church.
Disperse and return to your homes or to your church. I said, "Major, may I have a word?" He said, "There will be no word." You saw these men putting on their gas masks. He said, "Troopers advance."
Troopers here, advance.
They came toward us. Beating us with nightsticks, trampling us with horses, releasing tear gas. I was the first person to be hit. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to down that bridge. I thought it was my last nonviolent protest. And all these many years later, I don't recall I made it back across that bridge to the church. I do recall being in the church. They asked me to say something to the audience. And I stood up and said something like, "I don't understand it. Now President Johnson can send troops to Vietnam and cannot send troops to Selma, Alabama to protect people who only desires to register to vote."
We miss you. It's totally not the same without.
Okay, so let's see.
So that we could.
Okay. Okay, then. So that was it for that video. So that was John Lewis telling his story of sharing his life story about what took place at Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, and um, just basically sharing his legacy on what impact that it has done for Black people and for the civil rights movements in general. So, with that being said, you guys, I'm about to get ready to log off of here, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful afternoon. Please be safe out there. If you out there, please be safe. Make sure that being careful during this pandemic. And if you are watching from the YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you like this channel, if you want to share this channel, you are more than welcome to do so. If you are watching from Facebook and you want to share this video on Facebook, you're more than welcome to do so as well. So again, we just want to pay our respect to John Lewis. May he rest in peace. May the spirit of the ancestor be with him. May he may his legacy continue to be here on this earth. May his story continue to be told in generations to come. So he lived a long life. He been through his struggles. He been through the fights to get where he is today. So we may not agree with a lot of things that he has done. We may not agree with some of his views and things like that, and that's okay. And we're entitled to that. But at the end of the day, we just gotta pay our respect to our elders, and at least for making the effort to put up a fight and to do what's necessary for our people in our community. So again, rest in peace, John Lewis, and everybody have a wonderful day. And I will talk to you guys later. Peace. Thank you.